Now, it's not just the health that's a big problem. It's also the economy, as we've talked about. It can hurt the bottom line for businesses hoping to woo talent to the city or area. I spoke about this with Barbara Finamore, who's attending the Paris Climate Talks. She's a senior attorney and Asia director at the Natural Resources Defense Council, and I began by asking her about her reaction to China's smog.
China has built its economy over the last 3 decades on heavy industry, manufacturing, fueled by fossil fuels. And that economic model just isn't working anymore for a variety of reasons. Most importantly, this choking air pollution that everybody's experiencing in Beijing and other parts of northern China right now. And the Chinese government understands that it can no longer continue on this path. And so they have been developing a new normal, a new economic model based on clean energy. And that model can really help to transform the country and allow it to continue to grow economically while protecting people's health and the environment. So we are just starting to see the results of that kicking in as coal use dropped this year for the first time in decades. Much of the pollution in Beijing is coming from the provinces outside of China, which together burn more coal than all of Europe. And the Clean Air Action Plan the government developed in 2013 has put serious limits on and restrictions on how much coal those provinces can burn. So it's going to take time for those restrictions to come into effect, and there also has to be a lot of effort placed on making sure that these provinces comply.
Do we need more rules, or do we need more enforcement of the rules?
Yes, you need strong enforcement and oversight, but also what many cities in the world are finding, that transforming to clean energy actually helps their bottom line, creates more green jobs than are lost in the fossil fuel industry. So that is self-enforcing here. China is looking for what they call better quality growth rather than just continued double-digit economic growth, slower growth, but that one that leads to better environmental quality for everybody and more economic justice as well.
You're there at the COP21. I know there was a draft release of sort of a semi-agreement among the different countries. And a lot of us have been watching this space very closely, hoping that there'd be a master agreement. Well, at least we got kind of a draft or a beginning of something. What do you think of that?
Well, what we already have is more than 180 countries have pledged to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And that represents about 95% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the world. So no matter what happens in the final wording of the text, those contributions, those commitments are going to carry forward. But we're also seeing hundreds of cities and companies and regions and states also making their own commitments. We had 400 mayors from around the world here in Paris the other day making their own commitment to transform to cleaner energy. And that's going to go forward no matter what the final wording of the agreement looks like in a couple of days.
The speed, the mood there, a lot of people say if this conference they don't get a deal done, we're going to be past a point of no return. Now, whether that's true or not, there has to be a sense of urgency here. Do you think the speed of change that you were talking about is that fast enough, and could they go faster if they wanted to?
Yes, there is a sense of both, I think, optimism and urgency. Optimism that countries have already put on the table strong commitments across the board, as well as from cities and companies and communities. Urgency because together those pledges are not going to be enough to keep us from dangerous climate change, maybe help us avoid the worst of climate change, but to me it's just a start. And once this agreement will put the architecture, the system in place where countries can continue to ratchet up their ambition over time when they see those economic benefits, then I think we'll be able to come back on a regular basis and have every country strengthen their ambition, which will get us to where we need to go.
One last thing, I want to end this on a positive note. I mean, you have been following this space for quite some time. Give us an example of one city or one country that has issued one regulation or one rule or one change in their economy that has had a very positive impact when it comes to reducing emissions and ultimately would be better for the environment?
Well, I think maybe California as a whole, as a state, is probably the best example. If California were a country, it would be the 6th largest economy in the world. And California has made that transformation to a clean energy economy, and it also has relied on energy efficiency to keep its energy use flat for over 30 years while continuing to grow its economy. So they have managed to decouple energy use from economic growth, and it has benefited the California economy a great deal. And I think that's a wonderful model for the rest of the world to emulate.